Hello, this is Sammy Bergman from Beit Midrash Zifron Dov, rabbinic assistant at Shari Shemayin, and today I'm going to talk about the quandary of buying a stolen lulav. So say a person is approaching Succot, they want to acquire their set of 4 species, Daled Minim, Lulav, Edrog, Hadas, and Aravot, and they approach someone who seems like they're a reputable salesperson, who sells them Daled Minim. Fast forward a few hours later, it's time for the holiday itself, and they find out that the person who sold them these 4 species did not actually acquire them legally. In fact, they were stolen. Now, this person who bought these Daled Minim was innocent. They didn't do anything wrong. They thought that they were being totally reputable and honest, but now they're stuck with stolen contraband. What should they do? Can they use that Lulav, Esrog, Hadas, and Aravot for the mitzvah of taking the 4 species on Sukkot? So the first question to ask is, how do we generally relate to stolen mitzvah objects? This question is discussed in the Talmud in Sukkot on page 29b and other places as well, where the Mishnah says there that one is not allowed to use a stolen Lulav. Lulav HaGazul is pasul. It's invalid. And the Gemara is actually curious as to why that is. Now, the Gemara says on the first day of the holiday, there is a requirement to legally own the 4 species. And therefore, even a borrowed lulav is pasul, is invalid on the first day. So the Gemara says, I understand why, if you haven't legally acquired the item, then on the first day, it's invalid. But on the second day, where you don't need to own the item, why should a stolen lulav be invalid? Okay, it's not ideal, but why would it not be, at least, after using it, why can't you accomplish the mitzvah of lulav and etrog? And the Gemara says it's considered a mitzvah haba'a ba'avera. It's a problem because you can't fulfill a mitzvah if you do so only by committing an avera, a sin, in the process of accomplishing that mitzvah. Now, that is a very wide-spanning concept, but the Gemara in Sukkah itself says this is actually subject to dispute, because there's one opinion in the Talmud in Sukkah which says that on the second day of Sukkot, you actually can use a stolen and borrowed lulav. How do we rule on this halacha? This was the subject of dispute among a number of medieval commentators. The Rambam actually rules leniently and says that on the second day of Yom Tov, you can fulfill the mitzvah with a stolen lulav, with stolen set of 4 species, as opposed to other Rishonim such as Nachmanides, the Ramban, and others who disagree and say that no, that you're not allowed to use a stolen lulav even on the second day. But how does that relate to a case where the person using the 4 species didn't commit the sin themselves, where they simply purchased a lulav which was stolen by someone else? So the Orach Chaim, Ravinu Asher Abachaye, who was a prominent Ashkenazic Rishon medieval commentator and halakha decider in the 13th century, rules that that's okay. That when we say a stolen lulav is invalid, that's only for the person who actually stole the lulav, the robber themselves. But if you purchase a lulav from someone who stole it, that's not your problem. You didn't do anything wrong, and therefore you actually can use it. However, the Ramban, Nachmanides, again, in his commentary on Sukkah, actually disagrees and says no, that even if you didn't commit the sin yourself, even if you are simply a recipient of a lulav stolen by someone else, you still can't even use that. And to me, that actually begs the question, why is that so? If I didn't do anything wrong, why can't I use the lulav someone else stole? And I think the answer is that the way we look at our lulavim and etrogim, the way we look at the objects we use to do a mitzvah is very important. And we shouldn't look at a lulav and etrog as simply a means to an end. It's not simply something I'm using to get something done, to check off a box. We're supposed to have a connection with the objects that we use to perform the service of God. We're supposed to have an affinity, a happiness with those objects. And if an object is used or is the subject of an egregious sin, even if we didn't commit that sin, we can't use that as a tool of serving God, as connecting to God. And as we approach Sukkot, which is a time filled with opportunities to connect with God through the four species, through the Sukkot, it's worthwhile reflecting on the beauty of using a mitzvah object, how wonderful it is to take a lulav, to take an etrog, to sit in the sukkah, and how we should be excited to sit in them and only have positive associations with the objects we use to serve God.